The soup lines are getting longer and longer. The soup lines getting lousy. And soup is like slop, like water. Water and soup is bad.
In order to stay alive, it's called survival, 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 survival.
Hello and welcome to the April 30th edition of Vibrations. I'm Keith Miles.
And I'm Sharon Morris.
Today, our show focuses on religion and its impact on the black community.
Man has always paid homage to a superior being. Black people especially have a long history of deep spiritual attachment to their professed religions. And since coming to America's shores, the black church has been a sanctuary for our experiences. Through good and bad, it has been there. And in our first story, we examine the church's role in the past, in the present, and for the future.
The black church has always been a stable institution within the community. Spiritually, financially, and politically, the church has been active in the struggle to survive. It is a place of prayer and yet a place of action. It has had a strong impact on our lives in the past and does so even today. The church is a place of refuge, and Reverend Herbert Alexander, pastor of Bethel Baptist Church, discusses its role.
The black church has been important in the life of, and I would even extend it beyond that of black people in the lives of people, because there seems to be a great yearning in the souls of mankind to give homage to some kind of superior being or superior thought. And I think this is particularly true with black people who, out of their experience, particularly here in this country, experiencing some of the deprivation of the human spirit, has found that in using the church as a great source of inspiration and direction for their lives.
Do you think that's why the black church is so stable?
It may be that the black church is the only institution in the black community that is truly owned and operated and managed by the black experience, and that may be one of the reasons why we find that over the years we've found a refuge, a place of a haven from the storms of life, because nobody bothers us in the church, except in rare instances where we've had invasions of the privacy of the church, and therefore we've been able to do pretty much what our basic experience has taught us, that which we're comfortable with. So you can't do that in the corporate world. And so we do a lot of strange things here in the church because this is ours. We perceive it to be a certain way, and we can operate it the way that we want to, or the best way that our conscience dictates to us. And that may be the stability that comes because we sort of follow a certain pattern that gives us comfort in.
Is that why the church was in the forefront of the civil rights movement and those kind of movements during days past?
Well, I think that if we wanted to speculate on the importance and the influence of the church, particularly during the days of the civil rights movement, we might say that the ability to orchestrate our activities from a base where we did have some exclusion to do that might have been one of the reasons. But I would say something else to that. It may be that that during that period of time, black people found in their inner spirit a new kind of inspiration that probably only could come from the church, from the background of the scriptures and the history of our sufferings and groanings, that out of that could have been the reward for a kind of spiritual endeavor that went beyond the politics and the other things that grew out of that as a result of that. But I think if you tie it to the structure of the church alone, without believing that there was a deeper spiritual involvement that led men and women to see what they were doing as an inspiration that was beyond, say, the bricks and mortar and chandeliers and pulpits and so forth, that might be, I would speculate that was a more provocative thought to give to that.
Where is the black church today? Is it still in the forefront of the black experience?
Well, that's really an unfair question to ask, and it's one that you'll probably get many different opinions upon. See, if we look at the church today in terms of it being a base of influence in the lives and the welfare of people who are served by the church, I would say no. And I would say that emphatically, that the church has lost its, not its savor, but it has lost its original kind of influence that it once had in terms of providing for people that one sure source of inspiration and reward. Because now many people would rather have a large bank account, a lot of money. There are others who would prefer to have a great wealth of education and position so that they can make decisions about many things. And we've gone that route. You know, we've seen in our communities people who are well thought of and who are influential in making decisions about many of the things that act to improve the quality of life for people, and they have no connection with the church. And there was a time that if there was one wellspring of hope and inspiration, you could always trace it back to the church. And in that sense, I would say that the church no longer stands in that curious and special position with people in the black community. We've gone through a period where the preachers have been maligned, as, you know, riding in big Cadillacs and taking the money from the coffers of the church and the morality and so forth. We've gone through, that has been one of the things that we've had to deal with. So many people are concerned about the stereotypes of the Reverend Ikes and other ministers who have used the church, and I don't want to be judgmental about what a person does in responding to his call, but we have been, in a sense, sort of stereotyped with certain worldly kinds of things that takes away the deep spiritual commitment that the church has always stood for in the black community.
Do you think that will have to change for the future?
Oh, certainly. Let me share this with you. You know, the one thing that we need in the black community that we keep crying for and we seem to be far from is unity. Now, I don't know what that means to you if we say we need unity, we need to be together, we need to share each other's concerns so that we might then find a better way to deal with what our adversities are. And nowhere else except in the church, based on its theology as well as its politics, could you find a better place for people to come together. Jesus said that by this men shall know that you're my disciples, that you love one another. And when you love each other, then the unity that is needed will almost naturally flow. And unless the church can find again this place of love and harmony within its own walls, it can never reach out and be the kind of influence and institution that it ought to be for those who are outside of the church, who are attached and detached and otherwise related to the... You see, almost everybody in the community is related to the church. Is that there's not a day that I come here that somebody doesn't stop by and say, Pastor, I'm on my way to Mobile. Do you have some gas money? I'm hungry. Could you spare for a bowl of soup? I need to talk with somebody about my suicidal tendencies and so on. So that no matter what your profession is, whether you're Methodist, Baptist, Catholic, Hindu, or whatever, is that this place stands for a special kind of influence in the life of almost every person. Whether they are for it or against it, it still stands. Now, but unless we can somehow regain the influence that makes us a body in Christ, we have a great deal further along the way to go.
The church, a place for uplift, comfort, understanding, and with more unity, a place of progress for the future. While many religious leaders concentrate on ministering to the spiritual needs of their congregations, others believe people need a more practical ministry, as Sharon Morris points out in this report.
On the corner of Dewey and Georgia Streets in Frenchtown stands this small white Pentecostal church, described by its leader, Pastor Elbert Shepherd, as not just a Sunday service. The Watson Temple Church of God in Christ, like other churches, offers spiritual guidance, yet it holds a special attraction for the young people that constitute the majority of its membership. Your church seems to hold a certain magnetism for young people. What do you think it is that draws young people here and keeps them coming back?
I think it's a church that cater to current needs, and the scriptures are made applicable. Now, I do write sermons. Very few sermons I write. Most of my sermons are expository teaching, and they find principles and concepts that they can make applicable to their classrooms or to their jobs and what have you. Another thing, I stress morality, high morality. And you would be surprised to know I did my thesis on the feelings of students toward religion and religious concepts. You'd be surprised to know students that might be a dichotomy in what he does and what he thinks, but he still admires that minister that say, listen, one wife, no outside, girls and that type of thing. And I stress that here. Kids flock in here and they like to hear it. They're looking for realness. They like to see sincereness. They like to see principles and preaching application thoughts that they can use in their everyday life. That's what we try to do. They aren't so concerned about these humming sermons anymore. They want to feel that I can when I leave here, I want to leave here like I can deal with this problem. I can meet it head on.
What types of programs does your church offer that are geared expressly towards the younger members of the congregation?
They like to get involved. We have street ministry. They come on Saturdays and like to knock on doors. We have outreach ministry with bus ministry. Bus goes out on Sunday mornings in various outreach areas and pick up kids and bring them. They like to minister to those kids when they get here. We feed them breakfast. They like to get involved in that. We have ministry for jail. They like to go out to jail. Hospital ministry out at convalescent homes. Broadcast ministry. We're on WA&M for a half hour Sunday morning. They like to get involved in that. They like to sing. We have the organ. The organ sounds off here. Beating of hands, drums, and that kind of thing. They like to get involved.
The action.
And the action, yes. We have even athletic ministry where they pull kids out on the street and shoot the basketball, called it shoot the rock. And these kids like that.
Tell me more about the street ministry. What is it that gets them to go out?
I think they feel the need. I was here Saturday and I found people walking across the lot who were intoxicated. And when you find something that gives you freedom and joy, you want to share it with someone else. And young people, when they get committed to a cause, they'll go all out. And they feel they have found something to give them a peace inside. And Saturdays, when they like to come here, pray, talk about it, and walk the street, and pass out tracts. And they like for their tracts to be something that's live. In other words, they get testimony from the congregation and print those and pass those out, give telephone numbers where people who having hang-ups, people who having problems with drugs and alcohol can call people who have been healed. You need a spirit that will carry over once he leaves here, and the church, only the church can feed those needs. A lot of outside agencies have come in, like the Urban League, the NAACP, and all these things, but There are still the deeper inner needs of concept of feeling good about myself that only the church can minister to that.
Let's talk about the survival of the church in the black community. In the past, the church has been somewhat of a sanctuary for black people. In times of struggle, they've turned to the church. Are we tending to pull away from the church now?
Once it was thought that young people were becoming disturbed about the institutional church, they found a lot of racket, and they thought, and a lot of hypocrisy and this kind of thing. But there's a new renaissance of feeling of blacks coming back to the church. If you've been here, and this church is full even on Friday nights for prayer meetings. And I think that they're finding out since the Nixon era that the only hope they have in high values, and that's where they're flocking now. So I have no feeling that we're losing anything. We're picking up.
Pastor Shepard, what's it going to take to keep the black church? Can you offer some suggestions in terms of practical survival programs that will keep people coming back to the church instead of turning away from it?
Yes, I would think, number one, we need to make the teaching of the church applicable to life and living. Now, as long as we preach fantasies and pie in the sky, the young people can't relate to that. They need something to help them Monday morning. And so we need to make the scriptures applicable to life. And then, of course, we need to minister to the whole person. He needs to feel pastoral care. He needs to feel that if he has a problem with filling out his income tax, and he can call for help. Counseling is a strong force that we need to stress. He needs to feel that he's a part of a family, that he can call on his pastor or for pastoral care, for counseling in his marriage, his troubles, his financial problems, and that kind of thing. We need activities that young people can get involved. No more can we expect them to sit up here Sunday morning and just come back next Sunday morning. They need to feel that they're contributing something to the total program for the better of the community. So you need programs that are outgoing where you can see some tangible benefit. And these are the kinds of things that we got to have.
Do you see the young people as the key to the survival of the church in the black community?
Oh yes, oh yes. I get letters all the time. I have the transit group. They come in, and every year we graduate kids and new kids come in. I get letters from all over the country of people who are trying to find a church like Watson Temple, people who are trying to perpetuate what they learn here and their feelings of hope that they have found here, and I feel real good about it.
Well, traditionally, black people have associated with religious groups that formed early in American history. Blacks brought with them from their native country remnants of their traditional religions. These have changed over the years. In this next report, we'll learn about some new religious voices with some equally new religious ideas here in Tallahassee.
New voices and new leadership often bring forth new hope and direction. In the realm of religion in Tallahassee, 2 new voices have been speaking out. Ronald Shahid is imam or minister for the local American Muslim mission, and Father Vincent Harris is priest at St. Michael and All Angels Episcopal Church. Though they don't always agree, they offer a fresh outlook on concepts in religion.
The Honorable W.D. Muhammad came at that time, 1975, and he began to teach us out of the religious symbolism that we were in, and began to get us to understand that there's a great connection between what was actually in the Bible and what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, but he just turned everything around and reversed it. So we feel that under the Honorable W.D. Muhammad, we got religion for the first time. So you asked if it was a change, if it was a different religion. No, it wasn't a different religion than what Prophet Muhammad brought 1,400 years ago. It was the same religion. But under Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it was not Islam, but it was called Islam.
I think that religion rather than being a divisive force, which it has been sometimes in the past, is a great unifying force. And one of the things about, well, Christianity in particular, which I see as being a very subversive religion, because if you really look at the Christian gospel, it says that these so-called barriers we put up, that we sometimes think separate us, really shouldn't be. And that one of the things that the people were so frightened about Jesus was that he transcended all barriers in terms of his relationships with people. He did not care who you were. You know, if you were in need, if you were seeking a deeper relationship with God, if you were someone who needed help, he didn't care who you were, be you Pharisee, a publican, sinner, tax collector, whatever. Jesus loved people, and he met people as people. Titles, distinctions, and all of that, he didn't really care about, because he saw beneath that and was looking at the person themselves.
Two men, two ministers with different religions and different philosophies. One issue they differ on is the removal of racial images of the divine. The American Muslim Mission has launched an effort spearheaded by what is called CRADE, or the Committee to Remove All Racial Images of the Divine. Father Harris sees their effort as more than that.
Well, I view the effort not as an effort to remove racial images of the divine as much as it is a movement to discredit Christianity as a blasphemous religion.
In the religion of Islam, al-Islam, we don't accept the worship of a man as God. We don't accept images at all. The Quran teaches totally against images and accepting anything except worship of God in His purity. We feel, as ex-slaves, ancestors of descendants of ex-slaves, we feel that one of the biggest problems that were put on African American people is the image of another man as God. And that other man, as we know, has been presented in the black church, so to speak, as Jesus Christ, and he's presented as a Caucasian man. We feel that that is a terrible burden to put on anyone. It's a terrible burden to put on a black person or African American person to tell him that somebody else is God and it's a man. This tells him that, well, you know, I can never measure up to that person because I can never be that color.
Art always portrays Christ as being white in this particular culture. Now you travel other places, you go to Japan, Christ is portrayed as a Japanese. If you go to Africa, you look at statues of Christ, Christ looks like an African. And it just so happens that in this particular country, most of the images we see happen to be white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. But the other issue is whether or not Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That is Jesus Christ actually the Son of God? Now, as a Christian, I believe that. I believe that Jesus Christ is God come to earth in the form of a person. You know, and that offends some people's sensibilities, to think that God would, in a sense, embarrass himself by coming and being a part of us. But I think that shows God's love for us. And since we believe in an incarnational kind of religion, that is, God became flesh, then out of that feeling, people will create pictures of art that reflect that God became in flesh. So it depends on the cultural situation you're in.
We don't accept that a man could be God, and we don't accept that a son, that God has a son. We say that God is independent; He needs no help. He gives help, but He doesn't need help. And to say He needs a son to come down to reach humanity is saying that God is a little weak. We don't believe that. So the CRADE committee is very similar to the iconoclastic movement in Christian history, and that is that we want to remove all images. We feel that to present any image of God is wrong. We support and we believe the idea that the Bible expounds in Exodus 20, verses 3 through 5, that says that you should make no graven images of God. So we believe that if Christian people would listen to, in a rational manner, to what we're trying to show them, they'll see in their scripture that God does not want us to have images in religion because it hurts our worship. And as I said before, the biggest problem that we have in terms of race cohesiveness in America is the image of one or the other man as God. If the black man is presented as God, son of God or whatever, then that hurts Caucasian people or any other people who are not black. If the Caucasian person is presented in the image of God, that hurts anyone who's not Caucasian. So we believe the biggest problem between the races in America and the world is the image of God as a man.
We all know the history of how religion was used, especially Christianity, to keep the slaves in check. Even though Christianity was one of the main reasons why the slaves knew that they were not slaves. But I think if you ask the average person who went to church, I don't think that they're really affected by that. I think if you ask the average person, took a survey or a poll, I myself am not particular about having images in a church. If you look at St. Michael and All Angels, there are no images. That's my own personal preference. If I were to have a Jesus, he would probably be black. But I don't see that as being a critical problem as far as religion is concerned, because the importance lies not in his color, but in who he is, and who Jesus is, and what he stands for, and who can argue with love, with peace, with justice and reconciliation.
They both agree that religion will continue to be important in the survival or life of black people, and though Father Harris is leaving Tallahassee, he, as well as Imam Shaheed, will continue to speak out. That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it.
Next week, Volume 6 of our Blueprint for Survival will present Black Pride and Awareness. Join us.
Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.
Like this.